Hello, listeners, and welcome. I don't know why I'm doing it in that sinister voice. Hello, and welcome to Pilot Season, the podcasting show where we talk about the first episodes of TV shows, aka pilots. I'm your host, Matt Crowley, and we're joined again by Sam Lightwing. Hello, Sam.
Well, hello. Nice to be here.
The last time we had you on, we were talking about Breaking Bad, and I wanted to do a little bit of... First, I wanted to do a bit of house cleaning from that episode, which is that, how have you been getting on with Breaking Bad? Because shortly after we recorded that, I gave you my box set, my copy of the first season. How have you been getting on with that?
Okay, although I still have most of it to see. I'm planning to get onto it over the Christmas holidays. It's a bit... Yeah. You need to devote a bit of time to it.
I remember also at the time you said you were still working through Game of Thrones, and so we've got you back because today we're doing science fiction, and I picked you for this because I wanted to do this with you because I know that you're massively into science fiction, as am I, but like you more so, you're very much a kind of dork about it. And I mean that in the most affectionate way, in as much as I consider you to be a member of my own parish in that respect. Because you're really into like Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica and like sci-fi, like you're really into sci-fi TV in a way that I'm not. In a way that I'm not. So, do you know what I mean? Like when it comes to science fiction, I like Blade Runner and Star Wars, the more the movie side of things, and also some literature. So today's pilot, we're doing Doctor Who, and I wanted to bring Sam on for this specifically because you're a massive Doctor Who fan and has actually carried on watching the current, seasons long before I kind of... Well, it's like I didn't necessarily like give up on Doctor Who or whatever, but what happened is I got past, like, say, season 4, season 5 when those seasons were on, and for some I didn't like fall out of love of it. I just kind of I just stopped watching it because I was like carrying on with the rest of my life.
That's how I fell out of watching Lost.
I see.
Yeah. I missed a couple of episodes, and then
it was just kind of... Yeah.
What on earth is even happening?
So, in a few seconds, we're going to be doing some time travel of our own. We're going back to 2005. Actually, I just realised something with, because given how expensive and how great looking Doctor Who is now, not only are we travelling back several years, we're also travelling back several £1,000s worth of budget.
We are travelling back so far in the budget.
Yeah, totally.
I think Sarah Jane Adventures had more of a budget than the pilot episode of Doctor Who. Don't quote me on that. I'm just basing it on the job they did.
You ready to go time travelling, Sam?
Oh yes, back to the 9th Doctor.
Doctor Who, it was created in 1963 by Sidney Newman, C. E. Webber and Donald Wilson. It's both produced and broadcast by the BBC. For American viewers, that's the British Broadcasting Corporation. The original show, it ran between 1963 and 1989 and has a grand total of 826 episodes, 97 of which are now completely lost to history. The show was effectively created by Eric Maschwitz, who was the assistant and advisor to the controller of programmes at the BBC, when he asked Donald Wilson, who was the head of the script department, to put together a report with the study group into the feasibility of creating a sci-fi show, as science fiction was and still is notoriously costly in television. They eventually concluded that a show regarding time travel would be best suited for development. And at the same time, Sidney Newman, he'd become the head of drama at the BBC, and was a huge science fiction fan, and he was made aware of the fact that there was a gap in the schedule on Saturday evenings between Grandstands, which was the sports programme, and Jukebox Jury, which was the teen-oriented music programme, and that it needed to be filled with something ideally for children. So, naturally, Newman proposed a sci-fi show should go there, and he headed up to the script department to put together a show with Donald Wilson, and they brainstormed what would eventually become Doctor Who, and with a couple other writers as well, namely C. E. Webber. Wilson and Webber had the most influence over the formatting of the show and the initial cast of characters, and it was Sidney Newman who came up with the idea of having a time machine with the inside larger than the outside, as well as the mysterious Doctor as a protagonist, and he also gave the show its name. So, for those who haven't seen Doctor Who, the pitch is it's about an alien man known only as the Doctor, who is a Time Lord, and he travels all over space and time having adventures with a companion character who's usually from Earth. Like, this was a deliberate ploy to create something new and exciting every week and meet all kinds of weird and fun creatures and planets, right?
Yes. And the companion acts as a counterpoint to the Doctor, so there's a kind of human perspective.
Exactly, yeah. And
So
also,
when he does something weird and alien, they can say, that's weird and alien, and he can explain.
that's weird and alien.
Because I'm weird and alien.
Plus, if they run out of money, they could just use one of the period Victorian sets that the BBC had already built for other shows.
They always have a few of those lying around.
They still do.
Yeah.
It was always very popular when it was on, like in its original run. It lasted a good 26 years before going through, and at the time going through 7 different actors playing the Doctor during its run. So, Sam, now you'll ask me why it got cancelled.
So, Matthew, why did it get cancelled?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Sam. It was a number of factors. Firstly, the BBC controller of television at the time had a personal vendetta against the show and wanted it cancelled. Like, he hated Doctor Who. Secondly, the BBC couldn't afford to produce it because it was putting a large amount of its money at the time into starting up BBC Two. And it wasn't just Doctor Who. Like, a lot of expensive shows at the time were feeling the crunch. Point number 3, Colin Baker, who is the 6th Doctor, wasn't that popular, which really drove the ratings down. And there were also contractual and artistic differences that caused him to leave early. And the show was very nearly cancelled at the end of Trial of a Time Lord, which was the serial at the time. And point number 4, Mary Whitehouse, who was the television standards activist, eventually got her way in having the violence and mature themes in Doctor Who toned down. So by the time Sylvester McCoy took on the role as the 7th Doctor, the show had degenerated into pantomime, which further drove the ratings down. So all those things came together and caused the controller of the BBC to take it off, and so it died a death in 1989. So the reason why it was brought back, or rather why the show regenerated, the reason why it came back was because in the run-up to 2005, the BBC was getting stung with a lot of criticism regarding the abundance of reality TV on the schedules at the time, and people were complaining that there wasn't enough quality drama on their network. And this is especially the case with the BBC, because it's generally in the BBC's remit to kind of cater to all tastes and be as broadly viewable as possible. So part of a wider plan to fix the problem was to bring back Doctor Who and stick it in a prime time slot with Russell T Davies, who'd impressed them with his work on Queer as Folk of Channel 4, and also Casanova, which he had done at the time, and put him on as head writer.
And of course, Casanova.
Yeah.
A certain star he would later work with.
Yeah, he was a shit-in. So, Russell T Davies' pitch for rebooting Doctor Who was very simple. It's basically, the Doctor is your best friend, Rose is his 19-year-old companion, and we're going to ignore the 40 years of history before this point, except for, quote-unquote, the good bits.
So, basically how Star Trek The Next Generation worked.
In a way, yes. Christopher Eccleston was chosen, was a very deliberate casting choice, because Russell T Davies was after a very different kind of Doctor than what had seen before. So this is just to establish that we're solidly in reboot territory here. So different Doctor, different kind of universe, do you know what I mean? So it's a kind of a, not that it's like necessarily a top-down rebuild, it's just kind of every component part is a notably distinct thing to upgrade it in a kind of a way.
Well, for a start, he's a notably plebeian Doctor compared to the previous ones. I mean, they didn't all dress as aristocrats, but...
He's surprisingly down to earth.
Yeah. So rather than talking like a professor, he talks like, I don't know, an engineer.
Yeah, right. Which is a nice change, and it kind of... Yeah. I can see the thinking, and it kind of works. So, I have Nielsen ratings, which is a surprise because it's the first time in a while I've had Nielsen, because the last couple of podcasts we didn't have them. This is including the specials. So, Season 1, the ratings for Season 1, it was a 7.9, Season 2 is a 7.8, Season 3 is a 7.6, Season 4 is an 8.4, and then there's the 2008-2010 specials, which were 11.4. Season 5 is a 7.7. Season 6 is a 7.8. Season 7 is a 7.8. The 2013 specials are 11.9. Season 8 is a 7.2. And Season 9, the latest season, is a 6.3, and with Season 10 yet to air. So what I notice in the viewing figures, aside from the specials, is that Doctor Who is kind of a solidly 7 show. Do you know what I mean? It's popular and it's above average view count. But what I've noticed with season 9 is that there's a kind of a dip towards kind of middling, which is unusual. So I was wondering, because you're still watching Doctor Who, and I was wondering, is there anything that's happened recently or in the last season of Doctor Who from your standpoint and observations that can answer that? Because basically what I'm asking is, what's happened with Doctor Who?
The quality of episodes has been wildly varied.
That's Stephen Moffat, right?
Yeah. Not everyone has warmed to the new Doctor, although he is very good.
Mm.
Compared to some seasons, there hasn't been a very strong thread running through it, a very strong overarching plot. The Matt Smith, Amy Pond, there's cracks appearing in time thing, there was a definite sense of it building towards a specific ending. The Heaven storyline with the Mistress, that at the start of Capaldi's run, that there was a specific mystery to discover and so on.
Mm.
It's been less clearly the case with season 9. Still a programme worth watching, but there are a couple of threads that went in different directions.
Yeah. With the current direction Doctor Who's going in, do you reckon that they can pull the ratings back with season 10? I mean, I imagine it's not like irreparably damaged or whatever, or even if it is damaged, but
with a few good decisions, yeah. But I don't really know what they're going to do. They've got a new assistant, and I have no idea how she'll turn out. She might be brilliant. So.
But you're eager to find out, certainly.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So let's travel all the way back to season 1 with the first episode with Christopher Eccleston and see how all this reboot nonsense kicked off. So first things first, we're kicking off the episode with new opening titles. Yay! What do you think of the opening titles, the new ones? I love that in the opening title sequence, the TARDIS does a kind of a freeze frame 360. The camera pans around and then it goes back down the same time vortex. I think that's so awesome. So to kick off, we get a quick series of shots in order to get the plot rolling faster, but done so in a way that disorientates rather than illustrates.
It's a strange music video sequence of London.
Yeah.
They're in London, there are shops, they're eating food. London. She's going to leave this place. She's going to leave this place forever.
Yeah. Our protagonist, Rose, Billie Piper, she wakes up at 7:30, gets dressed, grabs her keys, kisses Mum, and then leaves. There's some quick shots travelling through London. We see her briefly work in a clothing store. Then on lunch break, she meets with her boyfriend, Mickey, played by Noel Clarke. And they piss about for a bit.
Yeah, presumably.
Yeah. Although it's good enough to establish in a few quick shots that they're together. Then everything finally slows down when it's closing time at the store, where Rose heads down the lift towards the basement to give Wilson, like her boss or something, some lottery money. But everything is quiet. Say it with me, Sam.
Too quiet.
She then proceeds to do that really awful "I'm talking out loud to whoever might be trying to kill me" dialogue that you only get in bad horror movies.
Hello, is there somebody down there with an axe?
Hello, I'm vulnerable right now.
Hey everyone, I'm all by myself. And then the mannequins.
The mannequins.
Presumably she hasn't been down in this part of the shop before, or... But mannequins start gradually attacking.
Yes.
The kind of attacking where they're always slightly slower than you.
Yeah,
if you slow down, they slow down. If you speed up, they speed up.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like a natural disaster in a Roland Emmerich film.
So suddenly, yeah, as Sam just said, an army of Keanu Reeves start attacking. An army of Keanu Reeves start walking towards her menacingly and, coming to life. And so Rose is then backed into a corner, seemingly doomed, until a hand grabs her hand, where we see it's the Doctor, played by Christopher Eccleston, and he tells her to run. And they do. I like that. It's a pretty neat introduction for the Doctor, because I like the idea that that's how most people encounter him, in as much as he just kind of like shows up in people's lives. So rather than giving him a kind of a grand introduction where we get like shots of inside the TARDIS and like you see him in silhouette or whatever, he literally just kind of pops up out of nowhere. I love that as a thing.
So like like the background people in Doctor Who episode we see him just like running past, holding a sonic screwdriver, passing through. Stay away from that monster.
I'd love to see that actually. I'd love to see the Doctor show up in other TV shows as like a background thing. So like imagine like the middle of Midsummer Murders, you see just a dude in a brown trench coat just run for his back.
being chased by a colossal squid.
Yeah, totally. Right. There's a brief chase. The Doctor and Rose head inside an elevator and they head up towards the roof. The Doctor explains that the mannequins are made of living plastic controlled by a relay signal on the roof and that he intends to blow it up with dynamite. He then tells Rose to run for safety, bringing this chance encounter to a close. She runs outside just in time to see the building blow up in a horrendous-looking CGI effect. Like, it's the kind of bad CGI explosion where it's like, the explosion is clearly bigger than the building, yet it only takes out the windows.
They were clearly saving the budget for later.
Yes. Later that night, Rose is at home watching what had happened earlier in a news report on TV, whilst her mother, Jackie, played by Camille Codry, is on the phone with everyone she knows, telling them that Rose is all right and that she, should claim compensation.
At this point, they lean very heavily on the comic relief.
Yeah, it's very firm. Like Jackie is very firmly comic relief at this point. Mm-hmm. Totally.
And yet, so is Mickey for some reason.
Yeah, in a sad kind of way. Like everyone who isn't Rose, every human character who isn't Rose is comic relief.
And kind of a moron.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like Mickey shows up to see if she's okay and quickly gets dismissed, saying that she's feeling fine. She asks Mickey to dump the plastic arm that got ripped off during the chase. When he's downstairs, he dumps it in the dustbin. The next morning, Rose wakes up at the same time, but seeing as she's got no job to go to, she just kind of crashes for a bit. A few moments later, her and Jackie are talking about compensation when a weird noise comes from the cat flap at the front door. Rose opens it, and it's the Doctor tracking a signal coming from the living plastic. There's a really awkward bit that I'd quite like to skip past, where Jackie pretty much invites the Doctor to shag her right then and there, and the Doctor just kind of ignores it.
Yeah.
It's like a really strange aside. It's just kind of...
I think Russell T Davies, A, doesn't know how women work, and B, was just trying to shove more comic relief in there, even though it doesn't have anything to do with her previous comic relief characterisation.
Yeah, it's kind of like...
If she'd previously been the Shags Everyone comic relief, then that would make sense, but the guys come in to discuss an industrial accident with her daughter.
Like posing as a...
Maybe... As far as she knows, he's there to discuss the incident at the shop.
Yeah.
Like an insurance investigator guy or someone from the company or something.
Yeah.
And on the way into the kitchen to drink a cup of tea and talk about the accident, do you mind shagging me?
Yeah, it's like, it sounds hyperbolic, but that's literally it. Like,
yeah.
It's quite literally it.
It does not work, and it's weird.
As Rose makes the Doctor a coffee, there's a bit where he's just kind of bumming around the living room, reading things very, very quickly. And there's actually a moment where he thumbs through what's clearly a copy of The Lovely Bones and remarks, sad ending.
I would say more bittersweet than sad.
Yeah.
Of course, the Doctor doesn't like endings. He goes through an eternity of middles, really.
Yeah. And then the living plastic hand jumps from behind the couch and strangles him whilst Rose has no idea. And we were saying that Sylvester McCoy got pantomime.
Yes, more comic relief. I think they got the comic relief balance better in later episodes.
Mm. So Rose, she eventually sees what's happening, and they both attack it whilst the Doctor uses his magic wand. A sonic screwdriver to turn it off.
His sonic wand.
His sonic wand. It totally is. Come on, man.
Yeah. We
then get like a unnecessary long take of the two walking away from the house, where the Doctor finally explains some of what's going on. It's the living plastic's now attacking Rose because of her proximity to the Doctor, and the living plastic is powered by thought control, and thus turning off the signal means that all the living plastic will die. So they need to figure out who's controlling the signal. The only thing the Doctor tells us is that they're trying to overthrow the human race. Like you do.
One shopping centre at a time. How many plastic mannequins would it actually take to destroy, I'm going to say, the Red Army, the Russian Army, the US Army?
It's an interesting decision, because it's like you need some kind of compelling threat to kickstart your pilot episode off, but you don't want to have the Daleks in there or the Cybermen in there immediately because you want to save them for episode 4.
Yeah, you want a new twist and an old favourite. Or the Autons.
Totally. There's this really great bit where Rose asks the Doctor who he really is, and the Doctor launches into this wonderful speech about the world turning under his feet and him being able to feel it. And it's one of those moments that's clearly meant to be, like the moment of the episode or the bit in the trailers. He then jumps into the TARDIS and disappears to Rose's wonderment. Shortly thereafter, Rose heads over to Mickey's house to use his computer, and she quickly does a Google search.
No, not a Google search.
No.
Do you want to get sued?
No. I don't think they could clear the rights to Google at the time, or even Lycos, which was around at the time.
Ask Jeeves.
Oh no, not even Ask Jeeves. She does a search on who the Doctor is and encounters a series of conspiracy theory style websites, which I thought was a brilliant touch. Finding the one that asks for anyone who knows anything new about the Doctor. Later that day, she and Mickey drives to the person's house where she's invited in, and Mickey just sits in the car. The guy explains that from his research, the Doctor is a man who has existed for hundreds of years, having been present at the assassination of JFK and at the launching of the RMS Titanic in a horrendous Photoshop picture, by the way, because you can clearly see in the picture that his head has been photoshopped on someone else's body, because you can, his head looks slightly transparent, so you can see the water behind his nose.
The JFK shot is also incredibly unconvincing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like his neck's craning towards the photo they took of Christopher Eccleston to Photoshop is him looking at the camera. His neck
I would
looks
believe
weird.
that it's someone in the crowd wearing a Christopher Eccleston mask. Just an image taped onto his head. Who is this guy? You don't know, but in 50 years...
It's a 50-year-long in-joke. The thing I like about this, right, and what's cute, is that, we're recording this in 2016, right, where, because of we exist online in online culture, because, we do web content, so on and so forth. So we exist in something of a proximity to actual conspiracy theorists and wingnuts on the internet. So it's really cute for me to look back 11 years in 2005 to what the BBC think a conspiracy theorist looks like. It's just, I look at this guy and sort of think, you're so cute, come on.
It's just like this friendly middle-aged chap with a family and a hobby shed.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what I mean? He basically says that he's like a force of cosmic danger, bringing destruction with him wherever he travels. In the meantime, Mickey is eaten by a plastic wheelie bin that burps when it's finished. Do you remember we said earlier that
there are tone issues? Yeah, yeah. It did not need to burp.
I also love the really unfortunate fact that Noel Clarke has to do pantomime acting because there's clearly nothing stuck to his fingers. So he just kind of it's like...
I'm not a mime.
Yeah.
I'm a perfectly good actor within my range, which does not include mime.
So when Rose leaves, she gets back in the car and sits next to a living plastic man who's replaced Mickey, though she is totally oblivious. In as much as, he's just...
We should probably not have said... all the humans are stupid except for Rose.
Just to put an asterisk on what we said. I love the fact that he's so obviously a plastic, to the point where he's got Lego hair.
Lego hair, and he's not blinking.
They go to dinner later that evening, and Plastic Mickey begins interrogating Rose as to where the Doctor is, only for the Doctor to show up and, rescue her. After a brief chase, they do the whole hang on, the inside of the TARDIS is bigger than the outside, which goes on for far too long.
Yeah, she does it while they're being chased.
Yeah, it's
it's odd that everyone has the same reaction. I mean, if you think about it, as far as you're concerned, there's no reason for you to look at it as a ship. As far as you're concerned, you've run through a box, which is a front for something, and you end up in this huge alien room full of equipment you can't recognise.
Yeah, as far as you're concerned, you've just walked through a portal.
Yeah, you walk through a portal, but not necessarily onto a ship. You could be anywhere. You could be on his homeworld.
So when we get the bit with the TARDIS, this is where the Doctor finally tells Rose that he's actually an alien. Specifically, he's a Time Lord. and that the TARDIS is a kind of spaceship / time machine. He also says that the head that he took off Mickey, he's going to use it to trace the signal of the transmitter to the living plastic.
Yeah.
The TARDIS then lands in central London, finally returning us back to plot A. The Doctor has lost the signal, but he has a way of stopping the living plastic, which is a purple tube of anti-plastic, at which point everyone in the world smacks their head in a face. You know?
Yes, anti-plastic.
Yeah, we are dealing with that kind of pulp, folks. He also says that what's trying to take over the world is the Nestine consciousness, which lost all of its protein planets during the Time War, and is taking over Earth essentially as a kind of a food source. He then tries to figure out where the transmitter for the living plastic might be, only to quickly reveal that it's actually the London Eye.
Yep.
For the sake of clarity, this was 2005, and the London Eye had only been 5 years old at that point. It finished completion in March of 2000. They then head down through a manhole cover under the city, where they walk into a kind of huge industrial walkway, where in the centre of the room is a gigantic vat that holds the Nestine consciousness, who is controlling the signal.
Because no one here has seen Terminator 2.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up actually, which is that with the plastic Mickey kind of, you know,
As a T-1000.
as a T-1000,
sort
and
of.
so I reckon in Russell T Davies' head, this was meant to basically be like the Doctor Who version of Terminator 2, but the budget clearly cannot accommodate that.
Lower me into the steel.
Exactly, it's pretty much that exact set piece, and also you've got like Doctor in a leather jacket. So come on, yeah.
I will regenerate.
I've got a fun bit of trivia here, which is that the Nestines were first introduced in Spearhead from Space back in 1970 with John Pertwee when he was the Doctor. So yeah, it's kind of, this is an example of like, oh, we're ignoring 40 years of history except for the good bits. So all that stuff about how the Nestine consciousness lost all of its protein planets during the Time War, and so on and so forth. That was, that's canon. That's maintaining canon from back in the 70s.
Of course, they have the confrontation with the Nestine consciousness, and we reveal that, in fact, the planets of the Nestine consciousness were a kind of collateral damage in the Great Time War between the Daleks and the Time Lords, in which Doctor says everyone lost, and he couldn't save anyone.
Yeah.
And so it gives a context to the Doctor's weirdness about losing people and people in general, in that he's basically a big throbbing vein of post-traumatic stress disorder. You get the idea that the Doctors from Eccleston onwards are kind of a process of the Doctor as an overall being coming to terms with the Time War.
Yeah. So the Doctor begins to come speak to the Nestine consciousness as Rose discovers that Mickey is still alive and hiding behind some crates. The Doctor then tries to politely ask the Nestine to leave Earth until a living plastic bodyguard finds the anti-plastic in his jacket pocket, at which point they start to get hostile. Like he said, he only carried it as insurance.
Yeah, like bringing a nuke to a peace conference. Oh, this is a suitcase nuke. It's not. Oh, you're angry.
The Nestine begin to bring to life all of the plastic in London, which begins menacing people and smashing through windows. So we're very much in our third act here, where chaos is on the streets.
Yeah, essentially, their plan for world domination is the London riots.
Except in reverse, weirdly, they're breaking out of shops.
Yeah.
Rose, in an act of bravery, swings down a chain and knocks the plastic men and the anti-plastic into the consciousness, thus destroying it and stopping the invasion.
Yeah.
But not before doing a kind of a rather wanky speech where it's like, I'm a really tiny person, I don't amount to anything, but I got the bronze in gymnastics, I'm going to swim like that. It's kind of...
The smallest person can change the course of history! Wait, no, that's Lord of the Rings. Sorry.
Yeah, that's baby.
Yeah.
The Doctor, Mickey and Rose leave through the TARDIS and reappear outside Rose's tower block. He then offers for Rose to come travelling with him, with Mickey telling her not to. Rose then denies the offer before the Doctor disappears and then reappears, telling her that the TARDIS also travels through time as well. Rose is then excited and leaves Mickey behind, running towards the TARDIS for her adventure to begin. And that's the pilot for Doctor Who. Did you enjoy watching the pilot?
I would say it did seem better when I was a child. I mean,
Wait,
when I say when I was a child,
You mean when you were 25? No, I'm kidding. Could you see this pilot potentially as a good TV show?
It was an iffy one. Thing is, there's potential, but there's also flaws. So, possibly with changes.
Yeah.
I mean, not a rejection, but sort of do this, this, and this.
Yeah. Like going forward.
Yeah.
This may be redundant, but would you watch this show today, after today, and would you watch a full season of this show?
What? Do I look like a nerd to you? Yeah.
The answer, if we're being totally honest, Sam, yes.
Well, we already know the answer was yes, wasn't it?
We already know, yeah. So aside from the obvious in the backstory, where it was part of their remit and wider to bring back more drama to the BBC, why do you think this particular interpretation of Doctor Who got picked up?
Well, Doctor Who's generally been reliable for the BBC. I mean, it lasted a long time before, like you said, a lot of different factors brought it down.
Mm.
So if they could just get it up and running again, it's a reliable Saturday evening show.
Mm. So the final question of the podcast, which is, the big one, is, Samuel, would you pick this show up for broadcast?
Like I said, yeah, probably with reservations. Not necessarily the pilot as it was, but possibly go back, recut some things.
Yeah.
Reshoot some things, remove this, remove that.
Yeah.
I will Photoshop these things myself if you don't have the budget. But yeah, I reckon there's a salvageable pilot in there.
I think in a controversial move, I'm going to have to say no.
Burn him.
No, don't.
I'll give you his address.
Look, I don't hate Doctor Who at all. Look, I have no animosity towards it at all. I just think this is a really bad pilot. I really do. I don't think... obviously, I'm fully aware of how good Doctor Who has gotten, and I'm fully aware of how good Doctor Who got shortly after this, and how good it's gotten now. But, if I were an executive looking at this pilot, I would just think, are you for real? Do you know what I mean? Because it just looks so... The only word I can think of to describe it is anemic. In as much as you get the sense that it's really reaching for something, but it's so critically under budget to get there. And also, I think there are some serious kind of writing faults. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, with the tone issue, and also with, a lot of the characters are really, really stuck, except for even Rose has barely got any characterization to her. The only character who has...
Stage, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only character who really has definition is the Doctor, and that's largely because we recognise his characterisation from, the previous times that we've known him from, other seasons. Even if you are coming into this fresh and never having seen Doctor Who before, you're going to kind of get a general sense of him. I get the sense with this is that the Doctor and his characterisation, his world, kind of came first, and everything else, literally everything else, from the plot to the characters to the monsters, so on and so forth, are totally an afterthought. The entire focus of the script was the Doctor 100% and setting up the TARDIS and all that kind of stuff, but the plot, the characters, and everything else is such an afterthought. That's why I think it feels so anemic. It feels so weightless, and it feels so kind of undercooked as a thing. I would not greenlit like this. And I know people want to get attached to it, but it's Doctor Who, blah blah blah. I would green it on the basis that it's Doctor Who, and I get that. I totally get that. And I would be tempted to greenlight it because it's Doctor Who, and you'll know it will do well. But I personally, I have issues with with the quality of the thing, and I think if I was putting together a brand new Doctor Who for people to see, I would demand it be better than this. Do you know what I mean? I feel very, very strongly about that because I know that some of you were thinking, well, I'd greenlit it, because it's Doctor Who and, people want Doctor Who. But the thing is, if I were a Doctor Who fan, and I kind of am, but I'm not hardcore, but if I were a massive Doctor Who fan, I would demand better than this. I'm sorry, but I would. And that's why. Like I said, no animosity towards Doctor Who whatsoever. I love it as a show. I think it's doing really well. I love David Tennant. I particularly love Season 2 and Season 3. But this pilot is just not good. It's a bad pilot, and I just would not have anything to do with it. I'm sorry, I wouldn't. And that's as honest as I can be. So yeah, it's a yes for you and a no for me. Wonderful. So Sam, you don't really have like a Twitter account or anything. But what I am going to do is I'm going to point our listeners to the website under thethinkingtree.wordpress.com, because not that I think you're getting back into it recently, but there was a period where you were writing these absolutely wonderful political columns. For
Didn't all work out, but some of them were good.
yeah, I thought a lot of them were just really, really excellent. It was under the heading of That Brain Thing, which I thought was marvellous. Yeah, and it was just solid gold. Like once every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever. And even though you seem to have it's either on hiatus or it's retired. I'm not quite sure, but I'd love to see it come back. But in the meantime, anyone who's listening to this can go and read them. They're just magical. We will say goodbye and we'll come back for another really fun and frolicky, exciting episode of happiness and laughter here at the house that Jack built. So, that's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.